Hey, Swanee,
Yes, Shannon?
are you a fair weather dog trainer?
I would love to be a fair weather dog trainer, but I have dogs, and dogs need exercise and training all year round.
Oh, we're talking about how to make that as easy and efficient as possible today. Welcome back to the McCann Dogs Podcast.
So very nice.
Swanee, it's cold outside. What are you doing with your dog?
Now,
Now the cat's out of the bag.
right, yes.
The dog is out of the doghouse. The cat is out of the bag.
Right,
We are
yes.
talking about cold weather today. So first off, how's life? What's new?
Well, it's cold outside.
It is cold outside.
That is something new. So I am
Yeah.
having to put a hat on and gloves and a winter coat when I go out because Honda's older. He needs to put his coat on when he goes out too. He didn't have to wear a coat when he was younger, but he's much more frail now. So
Yeah.
now I have to get myself bundled up and I have to get Honda bundled
Yeah.
up. So
Got to get
it's-
everybody dressed.
right.
So, just because you brought it up, let's dive into clothing for dogs a little bit. What sort of temperatures do you think warrant clothing? Let's say there's so many different breeds here. It's going to be hard to answer that. So come up with a random breed.
Okay.
Malamute.
A Malamute.
And
If I have a Malamute, I'm never going to put clothes on the dog. A Malamute is bred for the Alaskan winters,
Yeah.
and they would overheat.
Yeah.
The only thing possibly, if I lived in the city and there was tons and tons of salt out, maybe I would put some boots on the dog to
Okay.
protect their paws. But, chances are, they're a pretty tough dog, so they're not
Yeah.
going to need clothes.
So, question for you: if you put boots on a Malamute, are you protecting their paws from snow and ice, or are you protecting their paws from salt? What's your intention there?
In the city, I'm protecting my dog from salt. If
myself.
if I was a musher and I had a dog sled, now I'm protecting my Malamute's paws from snow and ice.
Right. Right. And sometimes you can get like different salves and things like that. Musher's Secret is a well-known name of a paw balm to put on their pads to give them a little bit better traction and to protect their pads a little bit from the snow and ice, etc. So I wonder if they actually do. I'm trying to think about images of sled dog teams. I'm trying to think if I ever see boots.
I think some sled dog teams will have leather boots on
Okay,
their
like
dogs
really
for
hard,
protection.
okay,
Yes,
gotcha.
yes.
That makes sense because they're going for a long, long
Right,
time
yes.
too. Okay, so Malamute
How about
probably doesn't need a coat.
How about a golden retriever?
Golden
That's
Retriever.
common.
I would say that the overwhelming majority of Golden Retrievers probably aren't going to need a coat either. There might be some, maybe when they're young, maybe if you have a Golden Retriever that doesn't have a lot of undercoat,
Right.
there might be a need for some extra protection. But for the most part, the sporting breeds, especially the ones that are bred for waterfowl hunting, my Tolders, for example, they're incredibly hardy when it comes to the cold. They have a very thick undercoat that really insulates their skin from cold and heat. My older male, Ned, 8 years old, he is 100% cold tolerant. I can't imagine ever putting a coat of any sort on him. He has so much coat. And even my youngster now, he doesn't have nearly as much coat as Ned has, but he has got thick enough coat that he's out there in this weather. He's not even noticing. Like, he's 10 months old now, almost 10 months old, and he's not even noticing that it's cold out. There's been absolutely no issues. He's having a blast. He loves it. He'll roll in the snow. He'll eat the snow. Oh my gosh, he eats a lot of snow. It's lots of fun to eat snow. So,
But even my Malinois and my Corgis, my Sheltie, I never put coats on them.
Yeah.
Dogs don't need coats unless they're elderly, they're frail, they're sick, they're puppies, or they're extremely short coated.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So on that note, actually, you had a Saluki for a number of years. So talk about what the Saluki was bred for. What kind of climate the Saluki was bred for.
The Saluki is from the Middle East, and they are bred to live in the desert, and the deserts are very hot.
Yes.
So the Saluki, and because of what they did was chasing down rabbits and gazelle on the desert, or desert foxes, they had basically a huge chest, very thin body, and very little body fat, so they could combat with that heat and they can move quickly. So they're not bred for Canadian winters.
Definitely not.
So when I had my Saluki, I definitely did put a coat on her because it's a breed from the Mediterranean.
Absolutely.
They are not used to and not built for our Canadian winters.
Yeah.
So as soon as it started to get cold, then I definitely did have a sweater or a coat on her.
Perfect. And sometimes you might need snoods for the ears
Yep.
and all sorts of things that will help to protect a breed that doesn't necessarily have the coat that is intended for our type of weather.
Right.
But
And I was careful with her too. If we got a day that was -10, it's degrees Celsius, I would, you know what, cowboy, like run out to the bathroom, then come back in the house. You don't need to be outside very long.
and she said, yes, please.
And
Thank
she
you
said
so
yes.
much.
Actually, I think at about 0, she was like, yes, please, I'm coming back in.
We don't need to leave the house ever.
Right. So different dogs too. Like my Sheltie could stay outdoors a long time. She had, so we could go on a big winter hike. Whereas, one of my corgis, when they got older, even though they had thick coats, they were very close to the ground. They're getting a lot of cold and wet on them. As they got older, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to take you out quite as long. But when they were younger, they were very robust in the snow.
Yeah, for sure. So clothing aside then, is there a temperature that you would say, no, it's too cold for me to go outside with my dog today? This could be potentially dangerous?
Well, I actually I do. Now I am wimpy with the cold. So this might be
You and me both.
Right. So I would say once there's a wind chill of less than -5 degrees Celsius,
Okay.
that's my sort of cutoff where we're only going out for a quick pee and coming back in.
Okay.
Now that's maybe more of me. Now if I had a Samoyed or a Kazan or a Husky, then that would have to change, of course, because those dogs can handle that.
Oh, and they love it.
They love it, yes. But with myself, like -5 is fine. But if the wind chill says it's -10, it's like, you know what? I'm just staying indoors today.
Gotcha.
Yeah. How about
a
you?
good call.
Do you?
So it would have to be really, really cold.
Okay.
I can remember turning back on a hike once before I had my own place, or before I had my own acreage, I should say. I was in Brantford and I would travel to get to trails to go for a walk. And I was out with Ned, and about, 4 or 5 minutes into the walk, I thought, no, I cannot do this. This is way too cold. We turned around and we went back to the car because he was actually, for one of the only times in his life, he was picking up his feet as he was walking.
Cold, yeah.
But it was somewhere around, it was well below 20 degrees. It
Oh,
was
my
minus
goodness.
20 degrees, rather.
Oh, wow,
It was it was one of those really frigid days in Ontario that you don't see a ton anymore.
Right.
And it was just clearly, it was too much for him. And I thought, okay, this is the point where I need to abandon this walk and go inside. But for myself, I'm wimpy about the cold as well, but I can't get away with staying inside because it makes me a little bit crazy. I get too much cabin fever. I really would pitch a tent at the back of my property and live out there if it was socially acceptable to do so. I think probably would only return to the house to shower, or maybe I'd bathe in the water. I mean, I do have water on the property. Who knows what the future brings for Shannon?
I would deliver you out some baby wipes, and you could just wipe yourself down.
But really, I just make sure I have really, really warm gear. I have several pairs of very thick gloves that keep my hands warm. I have an alpaca wool hat that I wear. I have a very thick dog coat that I wear that keeps me warm, and it has a bazillion different pockets for all the things I need.
That's why it's not a dog coat.
No, it is.
Shannon went to PetSmart and bought herself a dog coat.
It is a human coat made for dog people.
Yes.
It truly is designed for dog people so that you get the dog training vests and things where they have 8 million pockets. It's like that. It's a really
we
thick,
did need to explain
brilliant winter coat, and it keeps me toasty.
People are probably laughing, going, "Shannon's wearing a dog coat."
Yeah, you know what? They're cheaper than human coats.
Let's chip in and buy Shannon a human coat.
No, I just invest in really good quality winter gear, and that way I can stay out with my dogs.
Yes.
Because truly, especially now that I have acreage, we're out nonstop and for many hours at a time.
Right.
So it would be very detrimental to all of us, I think, if we were not cold weather tolerant. So I have to make myself as cold weather tolerant as the tollers are.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I think when I lived out in New Brunswick, I would take Atari, my Sheltie, out for far longer and dress myself up. And then with Honda, because he was getting older again and he's doesn't have an undercoat, being a non-shedding breed. I think we would, my time with him was outdoors was shorter, and he was quite pleased with that. He liked to lay beside the fire or sit on the couch, by the fire. Whereas Atari was more like, let's get out for a hike. So a lot of it depends on my dog too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and this is why getting a dog that's going to match your lifestyle is so important to start with. Because if you are, if you don't like the cold and you have a dog that is like super cold weather tolerant, you're probably going to have a hard time hibernating through the winter and saying, oh, sorry, we'll go out again in the spring, or we'll go enjoy the outdoors again in the spring. So get a dog that matches your lifestyle and be honest with yourself about the things you like to do so that you can fall into a nice, comfortable rut instead of a forced rut.
Because I find when I was younger, I was more gung-ho. I'd go cross-country skiing and in tobogganing still in my 20s and, go outdoors. But now that I'm in my 50s, it's like, you know what? I like just having a glass of wine and watching Netflix.
There you go. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. You change as you get older.
Although I happen to know that you don't watch Netflix.
Actually, I
you
don't.
Just
I
told
do
me
admit
the other
it.
day. You're the person that doesn't have a Netflix
I don't have Netflix. Yes, I do.
Knew there was someone.
Yeah, it's me. I have Disney, but I don't have Netflix.
Oh,
yes.
So bizarre. Anyways, okay, well that's
more cold weather stuff.
More cold weather stuff. Let's not talk about Swanee's streaming services. Alrighty, so
what do you? Because you have young dogs. So
I do.
Now that it's cold, how are you training? And are you getting outdoors? Are you practicing recalls? What's happening with that?
Absolutely, I do all of the above. Especially with Levon, he's still massively a work in progress in terms of his ongoing obedience skills. Not because he doesn't have the skills, he's got all the basic skills, but he's going through development. So as we talk about, as we warn people, as we know, things change through development. So yeah, absolutely, I'm keeping on top of his training, his recalls, his basics, all of the things to make sure that he still knows, even though the world changes. This is something that we have to do when the world changes appearance, especially, is we have to help our dogs understand that the rules are still the same. So if you can imagine walking outside one day and suddenly your world is completely different, of course you're going to be like, wow, why is everything blue now when it was green before? Like, why is the grass turned blue suddenly? You would obviously be very enamored with that. You'd be distracted by that. You need to learn how to work through that and still do all of the things that you need to do despite that blue grass, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's how bluegrass music came about.
We forget about that. Our dogs, our spring puppies have never seen snow.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it's like,
absolutely. Wow. Well, and if you have yet to experience that moment where your dog sees snow for the first time, that is a fun moment. Have your camera ready. That is a really fun moment. Levon was a blast.
One of our students had sent in a video of her dog catching snowflakes, and it was so cute. I've never had a dog that actually tries to catch the snowflakes. They'll catch snowballs if I throw them, but not just the random flakes falling. It was so cute.
It makes me laugh so much. My dogs absolutely love the snowball toss. And in the winter, I use snow as a huge reward on recalls all the time. I'll call my dogs to me, and as they're running to me, I'll be packing up the snowball in my hands, praising them, and then I toss it, and they just love it for some reason. And you know what's funny is I toss that snowball and it lands in a pile of snow, and they have to get that snowball. The snow around it is not good enough. It has to be that snowball. So yeah, definitely keeping up my training. I do a lot of field training with my dogs, which needs outdoor space to begin with. So that's one of the reasons that I have the big thick winter coat and the alpaca wool hat to keep me nice and warm so that I can keep field training through the winter. As long as it's not icy, I keep going with my field training. So I absolutely love that. And the dogs love it too. And it just gives us lots of outdoor time, fresh air, etc. And then I hiked constantly. Constantly. So yeah, lots of time outside with the dogs.
You know what? You make it sound appealing. You make it sound very appealing. Right. In my brain right now, I'm thinking, I need to get myself a dog with a thick coat so I can start heading out again. You
get a toller and you can field train. Or a golden.
You know what I think? So Southern Ontario has really changed. Like when we were kids, like we would get tons of snow and cold temperatures. Like I remember so much fun outdoors. I grew up with boxers, and my dad would be shoveling snow, and the boxers would be chasing the shovel and chasing the snow, and we would be rolling around and having so much fun. Southern Ontario doesn't seem to get those winters anymore. We get this slushy, gross, wet stuff that's just not fun, and it's damp, very damp. So I think, I'm just thinking back to when I lived in New Brunswick. It's like, yeah, I did get out more into the snow because it was colder there. So we had tons of snow.
It's a nice snow, I bet.
Yeah. Whereas here it's just kind of slushy grossness. So we need to bring back our old winters.
Bring back our cold winters. It'll get rid of the ticks too if we do that.
Yes.
I'm laughing because as you're talking about the dogs playing with the shovel, I'm thinking of Levon. It's quite funny because of course all of my tollers have always chased the snow that I throw, but Levon chases the shovel, and he's the first dog that I've had that chases the shovel, and he actually steals it from me as I'm like bent over laughing at him because it's so funny how intensely he wants to grab this shovel. So of course we've had to do some work on, you will wait, you will not do this until I give you permission, etc. Because of course I don't want to. He comes in for the shovel as I'm going to throw it, and that's a disaster in the making. I want to be careful with him, so I make sure that I put some rules around it. But then when I'm ready for him to have his little fun with the shovel, I tell him, okay, and then I start slowly moving the shovel, and he just comes in as intense as you can imagine. And he actually it's physically hard to keep him from being able to steal the shovel because he is so intense and so strong about it.
You need to teach him to do the shoveling. He needs to be the one to be pushing that shovel along.
That's my goal.
Right.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yes.
So funny. Yeah, I have to. I don't shovel my driveway because I have 200 feet of driveway, so I have a snowblower for that. But I shovel the decks, and he just has a blast. Anyways.
Now, I find too, if I'm out, say I'm out working the dog, doing some walking on the street, like when you have a new dog, you have to train.
Yes.
It's like, well, I'm going to hold off training this puppy until the summer comes because I don't like it outdoors.
Yeah.
So a couple of times I have gotten dogs that have hit in that age where I really got to get off my butt and start training outdoors, and it's winter. And it's like, why did I get a winter puppy? Yeah. Why did I not get a puppy in the summer? Oh. So, I have to get outdoors, and I have to get my dog socialized and exposed to, different things, to traffic, different sights. I want to make sure we are practicing our loose leash walking and, different things outdoors. So I do have to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what else you have to do?
What?
You have to pre-open your poop bags.
Yes.
So that you don't have to take your gloves off when you're out there in the snowy cold to pick up your dog's poop.
One thing I have done in the past when I've had to train a dog outdoors in the winter is on my right hand, I'll have just a normal glove. But my left hand glove is usually thinner, and I'll sometimes cut the fingertips off it. So that way I have more movement and I can feel treats easier. So it's easier with my fingertips to give treats. So I've had to ruin a few of my gloves in order to do some good dog training.
No doubt. I usually buy a package of like the super cheap. They used to be 99 cents when I was young.
I know which ones you mean.
Even know
and
how
they
much
stretch.
They are now. They're a couple of dollars each now. But I usually buy a package of those at the start of every winter. And then by the end of the winter, they're all ready for the garbage. Because they either stink like treats because I've used them with treats and they've picked up the smell, or they start to unravel, or I've cut off fingers. So now there's like all these threads hanging
off them. Yeah, and they're just gooey with dog slime.
Exactly. But you know what's great about those little gloves? Is you can keep them inside bigger gloves.
That's true.
So then if you do need to open a poop bag, you take the bigger glove off. You still have the little glove underneath. And if you've cut the fingers off, you can open your poop bag. This is a big concern for me, opening my poop bag.
Shannon. Yeah. It's like me when I go to the grocery store. There's been times I've wanted to buy produce, but I haven't been able to because I couldn't get the produce bag open.
Oh my goodness.
I've stood there doing that little motion with your fingers, and then it's like I lick them, to try to open it. And you couldn't do that during COVID. You felt horrific licking your finger. But it's like, I can't buy produce today. I can't get it open. I'll have to buy pre-bagged produce.
There you go. Yep. There you go. See, think about these things before you leave the house. How are you going to open your poop bag when it's really cold outside and you need to pick up?
Or your produce bag when you get to the grocery store.
There you go. Oh my goodness. All right. So, are there specific things that you set out to train in the winter?
Well, in the winter, kind of the big things I want to work on is recalls and walking on leash.
Okay.
Those are good moving exercises, so it keeps me warm and it keeps the dog warm. And those are things that I'm going to be using a lot still too. I'm not going to worry about downstays in the snow or even sit stays in the snow. That's unless I have a breed that's built for it.
Yeah.
So if I have a dog like a husky type dog or a chow chow, something that's big and hairy, they can handle doing a sit in the snow. Whereas I wouldn't ask an Italian Greyhound to sit in the snow.
No, definitely not. If you've got a super short-coated breed like that, take all of this advice and think about how it will apply to your super short-coated dog,
Right, yes.
for sure.
Well, and I will work on standing weights too. So if I'm walking and my dog stops and I call it has a log, makes a log, does some logging on the
Rolls
road.
downstairs, a loner in pairs.
Oh yeah, I've mentioned that before. I can tell my dog to wait, and they will stand motionless while I open the bag and pick it up. Whereas in the summer, I might ask for a sit or even a lie down. Yeah. But in the winter, if I can do a stand and wait, then my dog is standing, they're out of the snow, they're doing well.
Mm-hmm. And if you are headed out to do some training, do you look for a specific location, or are you just training outside on your sidewalk? Or
I will often train in my driveway or on my sidewalk. Sometimes I will drive when kind of outdoor plazas are closed. So, well, it used to be Sunday afternoons, but now they're all open on Sunday afternoons. Yeah. But, Sunday evenings, usually everything closes down around 6. Mm-hmm. It's a good time to go to an outdoor plaza. Yeah. And, a lot of them will have like an overhang too. So you can do some training in there and under the overhang. I might look for like spots around the school that we used to live near had like a courtyard, and usually there wasn't much snow in there. It was a good place to go as well. So I'll scout out my neighborhood for areas that look a little bit contained from wind and snow.
Yeah, me too. Mm-hmm. And at this point in my life, I'm incredibly spoiled for doing the overwhelming majority of my training either inside at the hall at McCann's or inside my shop on my property. But when I was in Brantford and I didn't have a shop or much property, I would scout out the industrial areas.
Right.
Because they were often closed on the weekends, especially, or after 5 o'clock they'd be closed, and they'd have these giant maintained parking lots, right? So they're plowed out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're salted, but most of the time the salt sort of drains off and it's not a concern. Right. But they would have these nice open areas for me to be able to work my dogs, and I would look for places that, had big parking lots. And nobody ever seemed to mind that I would go and train my dog and do healing patterns and whatnot in their parking lots, although maybe they did. I just never caught wind of it. But I found those to be absolutely fabulous places to train.
Right.
I do like going to indoor spots too, things like Canadian Tire,
right,
Home
that's
Depot,
what I was going to mention, yes.
Yeah, the ones that allow you in. So give them a call beforehand. Make sure that they are open to having people in with dogs. A lot of them are not any longer. Rules change constantly. I avoid like the PetSmarts and whatnot, because I don't want other dogs coming around the corner into my dog space. And I've had some not so nice experience with things like that. People with dogs on flexies aren't paying attention, etc., or, coming right into the dog's space when you're trying to train and you're trying to help them be successful, and you're sort of, you're setting them up.
Yeah. And I find too that I sometimes feel that so many dogs have lifted their legs in those places, and it just doesn't feel clean sometimes. Yeah. Yes. But I'll try to go to a Home Depot, or there's a few greenhouses too, that big greenhouses that allow dogs, and it's beautiful to go in these big greenhouses because it's warm and sunny and flowers. So it's very uplifting, I find, to train there. But I'll try to go at times when they're not super crowded. So I'm not going to go Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. I'm going to look for those little off hours so I don't have a lot of people around me.
That's a good idea. Yeah, for sure. So let's think about some of these days that are just too cold for your dog to be outside, or maybe for you to be outside. What might you do in the house to help stave off some of that cabin fever stuff that we were talking
there's
about?
Lots of little things you can do in your house. So you can train up, of course, the stationary exercises. I can do sit stays. I can do down stays.
Okay, now let's drill down on that for a second, because I know people are thinking, boring, and what does that do to tire out my dog? So I want to talk a little bit more about how we can set up sit stays, down stays, etc., weights, boring, quote unquote, boring exercises, but in a way that they are going to help to drain energy from the dog. Go.
Right. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
So one thing too I want to say is that a lot of people are lax on stays, or they ignore stays and don't do them. But stays, even though there's something we don't need to use a lot with our dogs, they show great leadership.
Absolutely.
Here we are taking a creature of motion, and we are telling them, don't move.
Yeah.
And the dog is saying, okay, I'll stay
Yeah,
here. Like
absolutely.
that's amazing.
It's an
amazing
incredibly
leadership.
powerful leadership skill.
Yes.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right.
Do you, so just because you said that, we don't really use stays a lot. What do you use in your day-to-day life? You mentioned a stand and wait.
A weight. I use tons of weights.
Okay.
So the difference between a weight and a stay, a weight is a temporary pause. Wait there. I'm going to tell you to do something else. Stay means stay there forever. You are not to move. I will come back to you and release you.
Perfect. Those are our real rules of distinction with stays. For stays, for us, to build a reliable stay where the dog understands that their job is to sit there and grow cobwebs until you tell them otherwise, we need to make sure that we release from at their side.
Yes.
And that makes a huge distinction. It seems like a little thing, but it is actually massive because mentally for the dog, they understand that they're not going anywhere once they've had enough practice and consistency, etc. They understand that their job is just to settle into this stay position. So if it's a sit stay, they need to remain in the sit. They shouldn't stand up. They shouldn't lie down. And if it's a down stay, they should remain in that down position. And they shouldn't really be doing a lot of rolling and tipping and all this other stuff. So
yeah, it's just relax.
Yeah. So truly not overly practical. Right?
No.
Not a super practical exercise. And you would think, what is sitting there just doing nothing, twiddling your thumbs, waiting to grow cobwebs do for mental drainage? So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think it's an important thing.
The dog has to focus on holding position, and we can add distractions in, and the distractions make them learn impulse control and emotional control. And that can be very mentally tiring out.
It is. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You know, anytime you have to show self-control with something, you're using a lot of brain power with that. And with our dogs, we can accomplish so much with stays. And I'll tell you, like in my day-to-day life, I never say stay to my dog. Never, except when I'm training.
Right.
But I still do a lot of stays in my training, and that's because it helps to establish leadership in a very soft, non-confrontational way.
Yes.
It's very clear to the dog, you know, a sit is a sit. There's not, and it's very clear to the human too, actually. I should clarify that, because in a world of dog training obedience, where a lot of the times we find people are overwhelmed and confused, here is a very simple thing.
Right.
Your dog is either sitting or they're not sitting.
Right.
If they're holding the sit, they're doing their job properly. If they're not holding the sit, they've made a mistake. They need to be put back into the sit.
Right.
That's all there is. Same with the down, right?
Right. And we don't want the dog to go into a down. So some people will say stay, and the dog slides into a down, and they let that go.
Yeah.
But we're
never let it
we're
go.
picky. We're like, no, we said sit. You must hold that sit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what we want to do for establishing that leadership. Because if the dog just thinks, oh, I can do whatever I want whenever I want, they're really not buying into the exercise and saying, okay, right, I've got to hold this position because you told me I had to, and you're my leader. So it's a very, like, I love having these non-confrontational ways of showing my dog that I am in charge. And make no mistake about it, you know, our dogs are dogs, and they're wonderful, and we love them to bits, that we love them to pieces. But they do need good leadership.
Yes.
They absolutely need somebody to guide them, tell them what's right, tell them what's wrong. And having that ability to create deferral in your dog to you is so important.
Right.
And some of these exercises that really don't have a lot of practical application are great for teaching exactly that. So
yes. It's like just if I went to another country, say I went to Thailand, and I don't know their language.
Is that Ty's place? Is that his?
No, the actual. Okay, I'm changing. Say I went to Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
I know nothing of their customs. I know nothing of their ways there. So if I landed suddenly in Vietnam, I'm going to look for someone who can guide me and help me and be clear. And that's what our dogs want.
Yeah.
They land in our world, and they don't know English. They know nothing about human ways when they're born. They're looking for a clear guide.
Yes. Yeah.
So we need to be that clear guide to them.
Absolutely. And that way they can just relax and enjoy their trip, right?
Right.
If you have somebody that's a clear guide to you, that's going to make sure that you stay in safe areas, that you get to see the things you want to see, that you don't get lost.
Yes, that I eat the foods that I like.
Yeah. Guess what's going to happen to your trip?
I'm going to love my trip.
Like, hey, I'm going to hire you again next time I come. It wasn't Thailand.
It was Vietnam. I changed it to Vietnam.
I'm hiring you again next time.
But if you went and it was chaos, and you ate food that made you throw up, and you slept in a hotel that was full of bugs, you're an awful experience. So yes.
Next time I go back, I need to get a guide.
I need to get a guide. So think
Later.
think of yourself as your dog's guide in the human world.
Absolutely.
You're making things clear for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that clarity is such a gift. So,
Yes.
but first we need to create those habits for them to say, okay, I believe that you have the ability to guide and to lead me. So we need to be clear. We need to be consistent. We need to be fair. Some of those things, some of those things come down to very simple exercises like the stay. And if you can have that be black and white for your dog, it's a huge leadership win.
So when you're practicing stays indoors, you could tell your dogs to stay and go 20 feet away. But I bet you don't do that. I bet you
rarely
add distractions instead.
Huge, yeah.
Maybe, and your distractions are probably from like 2 feet away.
Yeah.
Yeah. What things might you do?
You know what? So here's a perfect example. Last night, it was a couple hours after dinner time. We were hanging out. We do hang out outside, even though it's freezing cold.
On your porch?
On my porch.
Shannon has the best porch.
So
you need to have a porch party.
We do need to have a porch party.
Yes.
We bundle right up. We've got our heated blankets out there. We've got a little tablet we use for a TV. We all hang out. The dogs hang out. Like we're outdoor people. It's just the way it goes. It probably sounds very strange. A lot of people are listening and going, "What? They're sitting outside in the winter?" But we have lovely patio furniture.
Yes. And you do have a nice porch. Yes.
Thank you. So we're sitting outside last night. The dogs are milling about, and somebody brought me a holy roller, and I was like, okay, yeah, we can play a little bit with the holy roller. And then of course both dogs were enticed by the holy roller. So now I'm like, okay, let's train a bit. So we got up and I had this quick impromptu training session where for about 10 minutes I played between the two dogs. I would play with Levon and have this little party, and Ned was doing a sit at that point. I didn't actually use a stay in that setting because I just wanted them to sit and I wanted to be able to change them out. But that 10 minutes of training took them from wandering around and meandering around the deck and being generally unsettled to zonked out in
that mental exercise.
No time, that 10 minutes. So I did some tug and play with Levon, and I would actually tug and move over to the point where Levon was kind of hitting Ned in the sit with his butt, and Ned had to hold the sit. So of course I'm praising Ned and telling him he's great.
Right, yeah.
And then when I'm done with Levon, out, sit, Ned's turn. And now Ned gets to play, and it's the same thing for Levon. And of course I was a little bit easier on Levon with the distractions, but I still played Ned close to Levon. And
did Kip get a turn?
Kip did not get a turn. He did not. And I should rethink that tonight.
Let him play with that holy roller. Yeah.
But yeah, and they had a blast. We had a blast. I was like, oh, you guys are so fun when I was done. I was like, okay, I'm going to finish now. And I'm going to sit back down and keep watching this movie that we were watching. But you guys are so much fun. My goodness.
Yes.
But yeah, that 10 minutes worth of training between the two dogs.
And all it was
them out so nicely.
Sitting weights and some tugs.
Exactly.
Yep.
Absolutely. And the dog that was doing the sitting and watching the tugging playing was probably using just as much mental energy for sure. Maybe a little bit of physical energy too, because it all ties in together.
Right, yeah.
And they were getting drained out as well. And then of course the reward for holding that sit was they got to have their tug session. Little impromptu 10-minute training sessions. Like you could have easily done that indoors. It doesn't need to be done outdoors. I don't even know why I admitted it was outdoors. I should have just said we were inside watching TV so I didn't come across as such an odd duck, but it is what it is. Everyone already knows anyway.
Everyone knows. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, like that quick little, you have to hold that sit while this exciting thing is happening over here, even though I know you want to tug on this holy roller too. Like, that's a great way of me saying, let's have some fun together, but there's rules to this.
Right.
And that's a great way of helping to build that emotional control. Didn't take any space. If I didn't have two dogs.
Yeah, what would you do without two dogs?
So if I didn't have two dogs, then Kip would have gotten a turn.
Kip is Shannon's partner.
Just
so people wonder, they're like, who's this Kip?
I know, we talk about him quite a bit, but it's from episode to episode, we should probably establish who all these people are.
So, and other types of distractions, you could leave your dog on a sit stay, and you could bounce a ball.
Yeah.
Why
you
not?
could you know how to bounce a ball.
If you do,
yes.
Sure.
No,
or you could play catch with your have your child involved.
Absolutely.
Throw a ball to your child, have them throw it back. Go in and reward the dog for staying. That's great emotional control. Things like you could tell your dog to sit and stay and empty the dishwasher.
Yeah.
That could be your distraction.
Sure.
And that way you're getting housework and dog training done
There
it's
you
a
go.
win-win.
It is.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. You know what? And these are things that happen. I don't even think about these things because they're just part of my day-to-day life. But when we go in the latter half of the evening, when we start making dinner, which is usually, 7:30ish or so, we make
You're
a
a
quick
late eater.
dinner, and then
I'm
we're
an
in bed
early
by
bird.
9.
I'm an early bird special. I love to
Are
eat
ya?
around 4. Yes.
There you go. But either way, whatever time it was,
Right.
I would go inside, and while I'm making dinner, now Levon's at the point where he is out loose while I'm making dinner, but both dogs are lying down.
Right.
I have a small kitchen. I don't want to be tripping over tollers. I don't want them, oh, what do you got there? Or I don't even want to take the chance that they might have something hot drip on them or something like that.
Right.
I don't want them underfoot.
Well, they might jump in your oven.
They might jump in the oven and say, "Okay, cook me up." They might jump on my butt as I'm reaching into the oven, and then they might slam the door and
like Hansel and Gretel.
Exactly.
Hansel and Gretel pushing the witch in. Yeah.
But yeah, like these, I'm not intending to practice my obedience at that point. I'm using my obedience, but it's still good practice.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? Any different distractions that happen in that situation, if I drop a piece of the carrot that I'm cutting up to put it as if I cook.
and if you eat healthy too.
This is how I cook. Yeah. This is how I cook. I take the plastic film, I remove it, I tuck it in the oven. I get those factor meals. I get the meal kits because I'm not a cook. It doesn't appeal to me. I don't enjoy it at all, but I do like to eat, so it works well.
It puts you in a tough situation, eh? I don't like cooking, but I like to eat.
Yeah, I know. If only I could get rid of both of those things. But at any rate, I'll drop things on the floor. The expectation is that the dogs do not get up out of that down to get it, and if they did, I would fix them because they're not allowed to disobey. They're not allowed to break the down.
That's another thing you can work on in the winter. It's, I could go in my kitchen and I can say, okay, I'm working on leave it. And I will pretend to accidentally drop, something that I've, chopped. And I can turn to my dog and say, leave it. But, first I'm going to start by training that first. So
absolutely.
That's a good warm up in the winter.
Yeah, most definitely.
Training tricks too
Tricks.
is another big one. Tricks, living room tricks, parlor tricks.
Parlor tricks.
Call them parlor tricks, and that's perfect.
Absolutely. And you know what? That is a huge part of what I do almost every day, really, to drain some energy from my dogs or to make sure they get some mental work, or really just because I enjoy training my dogs and I enjoy training tricks. So like right now, Levon is learning stacking skills and all sorts of things. Like he's learning how to put hoops over things.
Oh, right.
And
Those,
all
like,
of that.
so those little kids.
Like
the Tupperware or whatever stacking toy.
Yeah. So right now we've got like the bigger hoops that are really light hoops going over a cone.
Right.
And he's got that down pat now. He'll go and he'll pick up the hoop on just like one cue. He'll pick up the hoop, bring it over, and 9 times out of 10, he actually does manage to get it onto the cone.
Right, yeah.
So now that he knows that, I'm going to move on to a little bit harder in terms of the dexterity of things. We have students right now in our members only who are teaching the Connect 4 trick.
Oh,
so now I saw them doing this and I thought, I'm so inspired by that. So now I've ordered a Connect 4 game so that I can get in on that.
You're going to be able to play Connect 4 against Levon.
Yeah, there you go. He'll probably beat me too every time. I have no doubt. But tricks.
Yeah, or a little basketball net too. Dropping a ball in a little basketball net. That's always a cute trick. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a really good first trick to lead into sort of the other ones where you're interacting 2 objects together and they have to have enough dexterity to be able to stack or sort or whatever the thing is. So that's a good place to start if you did the basketball trick, but they don't even have to be that elaborate.
No, start at the beginning.
Yeah, you can teach nose taps and shake a paws and high fives and
roll over and all the basics. Jump through a hoop.
Yep. Jump through a hoop.
Jump through a hoop is a classic dog trick.
It is, absolutely. It's so funny because everybody always claims when they bring their new dog home, they always claim that they do this, and shake a paw. Everyone always has that shake a paw trick down pretty early, so you've probably already taught that one with your dog.
Yes.
But shake a paw turns into high five and wave very easily.
Or sore paw. Like you could say, you have a sore paw, and the dog lifts his leg, and you get to hobble along, and now they're an actor.
Feel sorry for them a little bit, and maybe they can steal some food from someone for you, so you don't have to cook it and all that.
Yeah, you could do shake a left paw, shake a right paw. Yeah. Spin is another one.
Yeah.
But if you go to our YouTube channel and Google tricks or Trick Tuesday, you'll find all kinds of tutorials to get you started.
Yeah, those are
great
some of
winter
our really
activities.
old YouTube videos.
Yes,
but
Shannon
they're
looks
so
different.
Great.
Yeah, you'll
They're
see young Shannon.
Young Shannon. Yeah, there's untie my shoe in there. There's play dead in there. Sit pretty. There's so many different great old Trick Tuesday tricks that I did with Reggie and
her old hairstyle.
Who else was in there? Was it just Reggie that did most of the Trick Tuesdays? Yeah, probably. My old hairstyles. I've had a million different hairstyles.
I think Squishy's in one of them.
Squishy. Yeah, Squishy did the, Squishy was a deaf CKC Spaniel that lived with me for a bit, and he did the hand tap trick. So we introduced that with Squishy. Yeah, he was a good little dog. Yeah. He was a cutie pie.
So there's endless things you can do with your dog indoors. Stays, weights, leave-its, tricks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and even sniff games too. Having your
Sniff
dog
games are huge.
Dogs love to sniff, and sniffing gives them a lot of exercise. Actually,
it's huge because it actually activates their entire body. Right? If you think about the nature of the dog, it activates their whole seeking system, which is basically all of them.
Right.
So when they're sniffing, they're not just using their nose. You know, you look at it and you don't see all of the energy that's coming from behind that. And it is one of the most effective ways to tire out a dog quickly that I have found. I love doing scent work.
And
you've done some scent work with your dogs too.
Yes.
Honda has some scent work titles.
Honda here has actually, he's competed in scent work, and he's a little dog, so people look at him and go, really? Like, he can compete against the German Shepherds and all that? And it's like, and he not only competed, he competed and did very well. So any breed can do scent work.
Absolutely. The weakest dog nose is still hundreds of times stronger than the strongest human nose.
Right.
So,
yes.
But yeah, you watch that little nose moving a little bit and you think, oh, that's no big deal. But truly, their entire body is in this thing that they're doing when they're sniffing things out. And I mean, it can be as low key as you hide a little bit of kibble, right? Start easy, right? Take a little piece of kibble, put it out in the middle. Actually, I had how to keep a good dog down. If you go to the McCann Dogs website and search on the blog for how to keep a good dog down.
It's under resources.
Yeah.
If you look for resources at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yes.
When Reggie had his butt bulb moments, I say, he had perianal hernias that he had to have removed. And so I needed to keep him quiet. I did a whole bunch of documenting of the things that I did with him to drain mental energy. And that was one of the games. So I explained how to get started with it. Very easy. Just, put a piece of kibble in the middle of the living room floor. Let your dog watch you even put it out, and then go to them, tell them, find it or something like that. Some sort of cue word that you're going to use. And then once they start to turn on to the game, you can make it harder and harder, hide it in different areas of the house, and you will see them get so turned on and motivated by this game.
Yes.
I would say there's very few dogs that do not like using their nose. They go right into that hunting instinct. They go right into that predatory mode, and they're basically using their entire body through their nose. It's just fantastic.
And if you're really interested in scent work too, our monthly members only program, which you're eligible to join after Life Skills, has a whole section on teaching your dog scent work, but not scenting for food, scenting for actual smells.
Yeah.
So
we've actually done 2 months on scent work, which was fabulous because we got to dive in even deeper to things. But using essential oils.
Essential oils, yes.
Tiny little drop of essential oils. We talked about how to set that up, how to store your scent, all the things that you need to know for scent, and then how to introduce it, how to build it. Right. It's such a fun sport. And, I love it.
One of our students has gone on to compete.
She has,
and done very well. A little Scottish Terrier. So yes.
Well, we've had her on the podcast.
We've had her on our podcast.
Yeah, that's so funny.
So when you compete in scent work, the dogs aren't finding food. In fact, they have to ignore food. If there's food down, they have to ignore it in the competition. But they're generally, it's usually a drop of an essential oil put on a Q-tip and hidden somewhere in a room.
Yes, absolutely, in a big room.
And there might be multiple. There might be multiple smells and multiple different ones they have to find. Yeah. Or I remember when one of Honda's he was in, it was in a house, and one room had nothing in it. So they said, you got 3 rooms to search, go ahead. And I remember going in one room, and right away Honda was kind of disinterested. Yeah. So I thought, I don't think there's anything in here, but let's search it. And sure enough, Honda was right. Nothing was in that room. So kind of sets you up a little bit to have to think in these
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
But it's super interesting. So
much fun.
yeah, look up scent detection or nose work, it's called.
Yep.
That's another great winter activity that you can work on.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. You can also do discrimination when it comes to scent too.
Yes,
Like
yes.
there's so many different things that you can do when it comes to scent. So really, really cool activity, really mentally and physically draining for the dogs for sure.
Yes. Another good winter activity is joining an in-person dog class.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Google your area, find out what they offer. And if your dog already has lots of obedience, then it might be a dog sport that you're looking at, like the scent detection.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could certainly just find a setup where you can go either once a week to a class or even rent some sort of facility,
yes.
right? There's a lot of dog training organizations that rent out their facilities when they don't have classes going on. So that might be something you inquire about with the local dog trainers in your area. So
actually, I just remembered when I was a little girl and my dad was very active in teaching and training our boxers in competitive obedience, we used to go to our church basement. I just thought of that.
Okay.
My dad would keep a couple of mats in the back of the van, and we'd go to the church and we'd go in their basement and practice. So
perfect. Yeah.
you never know what's available
Community
to
centers,
you.
yeah, things like that might be willing to.
Or some people will rent out horse barns too. The arenas, the dirt arenas that you can go in and train in.
Get you out of the elements.
Yes.
A little bit. It'd probably still be cold, but yeah.
Right, yeah. So there's no excuse not to train your dog in winter.
No, unless you got a bear and the both of you are hibernating, get out there and have some fun with your dogs.
Yes.
Oh my God. Would you get a bear?
Maybe a koala bear.
Oh.
Maybe a koala bear. Huh. But not
like
probably
a big
not
black
a
bear.
no.
Not a grizzly.
No, not a grizzly, not a polar. Although there's some cute dogs that are named bear.
Most definitely. All right. Well, we've covered sort of cold safety. Actually, let's talk about that cold safety thing just for another minute again, because I know a lot of times people will panic when they see dogs out in the cold weather. And I think that a lot of the times it's misguided. We assume that because we're cold as humans, the dogs are going to be cold as well. And we get very upset and worried for the dogs. In all likelihood, that dog is just fine. So unless you see them, picking up their feet or something
or
like
they're
that,
physically
don't be
shivering.
alarmed. Yeah, absolutely. Don't be alarmed. Most of the dogs have such thick coats. They feel great in that weather. So, so unless they're super short coated, when you see that dog out and about and enjoying its time, don't panic that it's too cold.
Right.
All righty. That was a fun episode to talk about winter.
Yes, it was. Yes.
All right. On that note, I'm Instructor Shannon.
Instructor Sweaty.
Happy training.
The McCann Dogs Podcast is brought to you by McCann Professional Dog Trainers. We help dog owners to have a well-behaved, four-legged family member. Please give us a call at 905-659-1888 or visit us at mccanndogs.com. Happy training!